Hi, listeners. Welcome to another episode of Melting Pot, a series of conversations with very diverse and passionate people from across the globe. My guest today is Emilya Colliver, founder and director of Art Pharmacy Australia. Emilya is an art consultant and an art and culture activation expert. Thank you so much for joining me today, Emilya. I know we've gone back and forth a few times, but I'm happy that it's finally happening. I'm so looking forward to getting to know you and have you share your story with my listeners.
Oh, lovely. Well, thanks for having me today. Really appreciate it.
So, Emilya, when did you start the Art Pharmacy and what is the Art Pharmacy?
So I started Art Pharmacy in 2012. We started with an activation pop-up art show in Sydney. We basically work with a lot of artists and we're the conduit between the corporate world and between the artists. So we're almost like an art agent. We call ourselves an art consultancy, art and culture expert. So we're all about helping facilitate artists get into larger master plan developments. We work a lot with councils, with private clients. So it's really diverse what we do. But our number one aim is to educate and support and be an advocate for artists in Australia, basically.
Okay, I was going to ask if they were all Australian artists or you also, so you essentially are like a bridge between the corporates and, like you mentioned, the councils and the artists. And you try, so you're like a consultant, so you understand, is it that you understand what the corporates are looking for, and then you based on that, you from the portfolio of artists that you have, you commission them to create specific art, or it's their art which they've already created that you then try and connect with the corporate?
Well, that's exactly right, and well described, because I think a lot of people don't really understand what we do. I'm actually writing a book this year, which is just about to come out in about a month's time. So I'll make sure that I get your address and send it to you.
Thank you.
Because it's the thing. I studied art history and archaeology in London, and studying art history, and then where I've come now, it's not like you can go to university and study what I'm doing. I sort of accidentally fell into this in a way, being in a gallery scenario and selling artworks. And when I ran an art fair, I realized I had more artists on my books, and I thought, let's try being a consultant. And that's basically how it started. So it depends on who the client is. So for instance, we're working with Deloitte at the moment in Melbourne. We put their art collection together, and they gave us a brief. So usually when we're working with corporate clients, we look at their mission statements, who they are, what their personality is like, what they're trying to do with their brand. With Deloitte, it was a brand new building. So they wanted it was like a new brand launch in a way for them, supporting the artists. So it was all Melbourne artists that we put into the show. Because we're based in Sydney and Melbourne, he was like, no, I only want Melbourne artists because they want to be local, supporting the local economy in Melbourne. And then, for instance, we're working with another big corporate company for Lend-Lease, and we did a big public artwork. But what they did, it was supposed to be a digital art wall. However, the light rail in Sydney goes straight past it. And so the specs of the actual wall, they gave it to us and said, can you actually put a public artwork in here? So it really depends. Some of the jobs that we get on our books are either us trying to sort of help them with a solution, or they're doing like an activation for like Chinese New Year or Christmas. It really depends. I mean, we've got a couple of pillars within we did quite a big rebrand for our business last year, because we basically had the online gallery and then we had the consulting side of it. And then what we realized was people were going to our online gallery. So we've got strategy, which we help with master planning. We've got public realm, which is basically the public art, activations, which is going into lobbies, or, for instance, as I mentioned, Chinese New Year, Christmas, digital. And digital has all got to do with, when you walk into a lobby or when you go on a train, you see the digital artworks. What we're really trying to push at the moment is to think about those digital screens, not just as advertisement, but what about having artwork actually on these digital screens? And then we've got experiences. So we did cultural walking tours in Sydney, Melbourne and Tasmania. However, because of COVID, we have put that on ice at the moment. So they're our main 5 key pillars to our business.
So when you say cultural walking tours, what exactly happens on those tours?
Oh, we had, look, I started, it was Culture Scouts 5 years ago. Oh, it's amazing. We walk all around different suburbs in Sydney. For instance, we did street art walking tours. So we meet at a certain point. We have a tour guide, maybe myself, but in the end, we ended up having about 15 different tour guides. They'd meet with us and they'd actually walk through Sydney, but usually about 2 to 3 hours. We stop and have a coffee. We stop and have food. We go into art galleries. We go into artist studios. We see some retail shops. We meet the retailers. It was fabulous. And actually, we had a lot of Singaporean journalists. So I know that the appetite and the Singaporeans they're very conscious. They love shopping, but they love curiosities. I really loved working with the journalists that I met. We work a lot with a tourism board, so Tourism Australian Destination New South Wales, because rather than when you turn up to Australia, what was happening is everyone turns up and they go to the Opera House, the bridge climb, but actually that's not a true reflection of Sydney. And I basically take you around the neighborhoods where the locals live, where you go and have a coffee. And yeah, look, it was great. We did about 6 different tours, but unfortunately at the moment we've put everything on hold just for another year or 2.
Yeah, you're right. You go as a tourist and you just look at the surface of whatever is advertised about a city or a place. You don't really understand the nuances and you don't really understand the actual local culture for which I agree that you really do need to go into these tiny neighborhoods and actually be able to talk to the local people, spend time with them. That's the only way in which you can really understand the culture. So I think what you're doing, and art definitely brings people together. So if you're trying to do it through art, which is just so amazing. Before I sort of start talking to you about your book and what it's all about, how do you find the artists? I'm sure you've gotten to a stage now where the artists approach you rather than you approaching them.
That's right. So in the early days, we had the pop-up show and we had to ask people. And I mean, in 2012, even then, Instagram was just coming out. It was quite hard. So it was basically word of mouth. I also ran an art fair. There was a booth with 100 artists. So that really helped, I suppose, build my database. So we've got a database now. So we've had a job come through from Disney. They've got Frozen 2 coming to Australia. They're asking us to look at a mural for them. They specified a female mural artist. I was like, great. So we've got a database where we'll actually put in mural artist female and it'll come out and say, okay, this is who we have. So we're in a really great position. We're working on the Intercontinental at the moment. We've pitched some ideas. They were very specific about a watercolor artist. So then we're actually able to go back into our database. So we have got a big database now of artists. People do contact us. And the thing is, you've got to think about artists. They're so diverse. You've got video artists, you've got watercolors, you've got oil paint, you've got acrylics, you've got furniture designers, you've got digital artists that's just online, you've got illustrators. So I think a lot of people do think a 2D art on a wall, that's what art is. And what I'm trying to do is actually push those barriers to say, no, actually art is so diverse. And especially with artists as well, and like lighting artists as well, for instance, people that they specialize in being a lighting artist, and they're also just like a painting artist in the same sort of field. It's very important.
Yeah, they're creating the different light. I mean, it is clearly what it communicates, lighting, it sends out a lot of different, because you look at different kinds of effects. It's not just simple lights. So I understand that. Yeah, there's a whole creative behind it, and therefore you would call them lighting artists as well. So yeah, so I get that. So tell me and my listeners a little bit about your book that you said is being launched in a month's time, you said?
Exactly. I'm actually in a month. It's called Making Art Matter. I actually wrote quite a big book. It was supposed to be quite small. It was a manifesto originally, but it's called. It was a huge book. I sent it to my editor, and she said, "I feel like there's two books in this." So I've started a smaller book, which is only about 20,000 words, and it's called Making Art Matter. So it's really to try and get people to understand the difference between art, try and get an artist on early if you're starting on a big master plan development. Have somebody within your organization who actually loves art rather than, giving it to the graduate. Because if you're selecting the person that's already got a passion for art to do the project, you'll have a better outcome. And I know that sounds really obvious, but I sometimes feel like, at the moment we're working on a big project and we've been given the graduate to work with directly. And I mean, he's great, lovely, but I feel like that people, some people quite high up don't know anything about art and they're like, okay, not sure how to do this, and then they'll give it to somebody else. I mean, that's another book that I'm thinking about writing called The Creative Pioneer. So thinking, how do you find these people within an organization that actually loves and support artists, and how do you get them on board? How do you get those bean counters, the people that are making those key decisions within the organization, how to work with those people that love the art? So there's lots of different ideas there, and hopefully I made sense then.
You're listening to a fusion of stories recounted for the first time ever by some fascinating people from across the globe with me, Payal, on this very unique and special podcast series, Melting Pot.
But the second book is called The Art Implementer. So that's the how-to guide of working with artists on big developments. We've got some funding from Create New South Wales here in Australia. So it's the toolkit of, how you get those idiot guides to blah, blah, blah. This is the breakdown of how to work with artists on projects. Interestingly enough, I was looking at Singapore as my next international space. So it was really interesting you reached out before COVID. I was actually speaking to a couple of people over there in the developmental world. And I know that there are some Singaporean property developers over here in Australia that I've sort of contacted. But obviously with COVID and everything, people are sort of putting everything on hold. But I think maybe in a couple of years when everything's got back to normal, I will look at Singapore as a location, because I feel as a country, you've got some great public artwork. I've read a lot of papers on it, and I do read up about what Singapore's doing. So I'm quite excited as a country, especially so close to Australia too.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and you're right. Singapore there is a lot of, in fact, I recently talked to an artist, and, he is so excited about the project that he's working on currently in the digital space with art. And it seems, and specifically with mural art. So it seems like a really exciting project. So yes, there are, and it's encouraged. So yeah, I think Singapore would be an interesting international destination to look at and to start working with. So that should be exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've been to Singapore many times. Great food, great people, great culture.
Yes, it is. An ever evolving city, country. There's always something new happening, especially when it comes to food. It's just amazing. Over the years, it's just really, really evolved. And of course, a lot of people look towards Singapore for the development in terms of technology. And so, yeah, Singapore is in a very great space at the moment. Coming back to you, I read somewhere that you sit on the advisory board of a number of different panels. So could you tell us a little bit about that side of what you do?
Yeah, so I sit on the City of Sydney Nighttime Economy panel with the City of Sydney. And so that's basically giving arts and culture advice back up to the city. We're learning lots at the moment about It's very it's interesting because you learn about noise pollution. We're learning about, we're trying to change the narrative as well because of what's happened with the lockout laws here. I'm not sure if you followed that at all, but there was a punch, and there was a bit of a violent scuffle, and someone actually passed away. And from there, subsequently, King's Cross was shut down, and because there was a lot of alcohol fueled violence, but then because of that, a lot of other theatres and bars were closed down. So we're changing the narrative, calling it, it's not Keep Sydney Open, but I always call it the ecology, the creative ecology as well, because it's not just about alcohol events. It's actually events that you can, the theatres, the small bars where you meet friends. So that's a great advisory panel. We meet every quarter, a great diverse range of people, from like Heapscape that runs festivals to a big hotel group, the hospitality group here in Sydney. So we all come together and we literally talk about the way we can change our city. And so they're doing like a big Oxford Street precinct that is going to be redeveloped, and they wanted our say on it. So we give it, our views of what we feel like could change. And then I'm sitting on the Biennale of Sydney, which is a big arts festival. So it's international. We had a great artistic director called Brooke Andrews, who's an Indigenous artist. It actually just closed maybe about 2 months ago. It only happens, it's biannual, so every 2 years. And it was in 5 different venues in Sydney, which is fabulous. Like, for instance, the MCA, Museum of Contemporary Art, the Art Gallery New South Wales, and on Cockatoo Island, National Art School, and Campbelltown Performing Arts. So that was wonderful because it was all Indigenous art from all around the world. So not just Australia, from like Sweden Indigenous artists to the Cook Islands. It was very diverse. That was quite fabulous. And I'm also sitting on the Museum of Contemporary Art. So that's the young benefactors, basically. So I'm very much ingrained in Sydney's artistic society. But what my real purpose is, I was in this, in the art world, but actually I've sort of jumped out of it, and I actually want to bring art to the masses. So show how the art world can actually work with, outside of what we already do. Because it's quite mysterious, the art world. Everyone doesn't really know what it is. There's a lot of galleries. There's a lot of galleries speak. And I'm really trying to break that down. I call it the, 95%. So 95% of the population are not sure about art, but then 5% of the population sort of do. We sit in this small little 5%. But, and it's quite mysterious, as I mentioned. So I'm really trying to break down those barriers, within the art world. And hopefully that's what the book will be.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. There's only 24 hours in a day. It seems like you're doing a lot. How do you, I guess it's your passion that drives you.
Yes, yeah, it does. I mean, look, I feel like I love what I do. I'm really passionate about what I do. I've been, it's the Ikigai saying in Japan, like, if you find out what you love, then everything else will come. And I feel like I've been in this wonderful position that, when I was in London, I had a friend who said to me, you should study art history. And I was like, what does that mean? And I loved it. And from there, I just found my passion for art. And that was over 20 years ago. And I'm still learning all the time. And now, being, I suppose, in the position I am, running, a small business in the arts, and I've been able to be, supporting myself, not just, on grants or anything like that. We're a commercial business. How I can help the next generation out there as well. I just absolutely love it. So it doesn't really feel like work. I mean, sometimes it does, but generally it's incredible. I get up every day and I think about who I'm surrounded by, and I feel very grateful.
Yeah, and you're also supporting artists who otherwise are not able to, they express themselves through their art, but they're not able to take it to the next level. So you're supporting them as well, which is great. I'm really looking forward to getting a copy of your book, and good luck with the launch. I've really and truly enjoyed my conversation with you, and I'm so happy that we were finally able to make it happen. So what happened to your throat? Because you mentioned, our previous
yes, it's funny because my grandmother passed about 6 weeks ago, and it's probably from stress. But I went to a voice doctor, and she actually put like a little camera down my throat, which sounds quite awful. But I've actually got a nodule on my voice cords, which I've got to go to speech therapy. And if that doesn't work, I need to get it taken off, which sounds quite awful, but it's benign and everything's fine. I just sound a bit croaky. So sorry about that.
No, no, that's okay.
Yeah. It's well, some days you can't hear it, but then yesterday I had a big install and I've had a big week this week, so then it does get very it stresses out my throat. But I've taken myself off coffee and I've taken myself off alcohol, which has been very hard because in Sydney we all love our coffee. So but that's been really interesting. But thank you for asking, though.
No, you take care, and we'll be in touch. And I'm looking forward to following your journey because I know it's going to continue to evolve. And then hopefully in the next couple of years, you will also have a presence in Singapore. So looking forward to that as well.
Yes, I'll keep you up to date, and don't forget to send me your address because I'd love to send you a book, and maybe there's somebody out there who'd like to do a micro book launch out there. That if there's anyone interested, I'm just what I'm looking at is around the world. Any friends that I have to actually ask them to sort of do a book launch in their local area. So maybe I can ask you for some contacts in the art world or something that might be quite fun as well.
Yeah, sure. I'd love to do that. So I will send you my address. So thank you so much, Emilya.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much for your time, and well done. What a great podcast.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Have a wonderful day. Thank you, listeners.
You too. Bye.
So enjoyed my chat with Emilya. She is doing so much work within the arts and culture landscape in Australia. It's incredible how Art Pharmacy is such an amazing platform that bridges the gap between the artists and the corporates. I would love to join one of her art walks around Sydney when I'm there next. Stay tuned for a lot more heartwarming stories on Melting Pot with me, Payal.